Good. Thanks everybody.
Okay.
Before we get started, just kind of a run of how we're going to go about it. I've got cross-country track and field coach Dave Smith and wrestling coach John Smith to share information with you. What we're going to do is we're just going to call one by one. So if you just raise your hand, we'll send a microphone over your way, and we'll do it that way. So as opposed to just kind of asking questions but you want to, you can raise your hand in advance. So I'll tell you what, rather than starting with an opening statement, let's just go ahead and get right into the questions. Eli, go ahead.
Do I need a microphone? Or?
Yeah, let's bring the microphone over to you just that way it goes through.
Can you start with the names again?
Yep. So on the right in the head is Dave Smith. He's our director of cross-country track and field, head coach. And then on the left here in the left jacket is John Smith, head wrestling coach. So, Eli.
I guess just to kick it off with the two athletes on each of your respective teams, do you have any updates on each of their conditions as this afternoon?
From what I saw last night in the hospital with Isai, he was in good spirits and feeling pretty good, and thankfully just didn't seem like anything real serious. And I think he is about to be released. They're running a few tests. They want to keep him overnight, but from everything I've seen, is he's going to come out of this, okay.
And for AJ, I went out to the scene, and we could not get to him, so I didn't get to see him. That's when he was helicoptered to the hospital in Oklahoma City. We went there, and again, with protocol, I never did get to see him. So waited for his father. His father was in with him the whole time, and his father was relaying me the messages. They scanned his body. They did everything they could to just check him pretty quickly, and I think it was at the scene of the crash. He was just a little bit out of it, obviously, and when he got to the hospital and after they scanned him, they came back, said there was no broken bones, but they kept him overnight for other reasons than anything that was any bones broken or major injuries.
Microphone's coming your way. If you can just hold on to the microphone, guys. That'd be great. Thank you.
This is for John Smith, wrestling coach. You said you went to the scene. Can you kind of explain what it looked like, what you saw, what you heard, what went through your mind, not being able to see AJ, knowing he was in that car?
Yeah, it was a lot of police officers. Seemed like a lot of ambulance that was there. You got a helicopter coming in. Yeah, it wasn't a good scene, and my first thoughts was that there was a head-on collision, and I got a call from Coach Dunn. He was a little shooken up and could barely hear him, but he did let me know enough that AJ's been in a car wreck on Highway 33. And so I'm not far from 33, my home, so jumped in my truck, and about 8 minutes later I was where the wreck was. So didn't get to see Coach Dunn. A lot of staff came, and we just sat there, and as we were sitting there, he was air flight to Oklahoma City.
Yeah, John, since you went to the scene, you've driven, like you said, you live near, you've seen what's happened on 33. It's not a great place to pass. When you saw the accident and you saw his vehicle, I mean, how fortunate are these two kids and the driver of the other vehicle, considering the way this whole thing came out?
Yeah, I didn't see the vehicle till late last night. They're lucky. It's definitely somebody watching over those two, and as well as the others that were involved in the wreck. But they were definitely lucky. They walked away from it, I think, with minor injuries. I think AJ's is going to be a little bit longer, but yeah, it was a bad feeling, not being able to get to him, and I'm just glad his dad didn't get to him, and so it was a sight that you don't want to see again.
John, you mentioned Coach Dunn. What have you heard about his involvement? It sounds like he was one of the first people on the scene.
You know, I talked to him a couple times, and he's talked with my assistant coach, Zach Esposito, a couple times. And, you know, I don't know, you know, the full story of how he just ended up there. I think obviously he was coming back from Tulsa as well, and or maybe going to Tulsa, I don't know, and just doing his citizen duty to, you know, help someone. The stories, you know, of course he called me following him and someone else pulling AJ out of the car or helping AJ out of the car. And, you know, you just hear it in his voice that, as anyone would, there was some fright to it, you know. You know, AJ's been in a bad car wreck, you know, and you have another coach telling you that, and you knowing him well, you know, you're just thinking, you know, you're just thinking the worst at time and just hoping for the best and praying for the best. He did tell me that a big man showed up and helped him figure out how they were going to get him out, and they got AJ out, and then all of a sudden this guy was gone. Disappeared. I don't know what to think of that, but it's a story that, you know, we maybe all be thankful for, and but I'm sure glad he was there. You know, I don't know how many people would go to a car that was on fire and try to pull someone out, but I'm sure glad Coach Dunn was there.
For both of you, obviously your teams are very close and whatnot, and both of these guys are leaders of their teams. How did you address this with their teammates, and how have they just mentally been able to get through this as well?
I would say that last night when I got called, it was all rumor, and the rumors ended up being a lot worse than the reality ended up being, and no one could find Isai, and no one knew where he was, and so that was about an hour's worth of panic. There was rumors he was flown someplace. There was rumors he was driven someplace. There was rumors he walked away on his own and got into a car and left. And, you know, his phone apparently burned in the fire. And so his parents didn't know where he was. No one had heard from him. So I just sent out a message to my team. Has anybody heard from him? And no one had. And so I just drove to the Stillwater Medical Center just hoping he might be there. And that's where I found him. And so for an hour there was, you know, like Coach said, your mind kind of goes to the worst, hoping for the best, and if you wandered off, do you wander off into the field someplace and collapse? Where is he? So my team, because there was no information, they start to create information, right? And it's, well, so-and-so said this, and it gets changed, and the story got worse and worse, and then, you know, we found him. That kind of put everything to a, you know, and then everybody wanted to come to the hospital, and the hospital was saying, no, please don't come. We're dealing with COVID, and we got crowded waiting rooms. We don't need people here. So trying to keep the guys away was tough. We had some show up anyway. They you know, let them come see him briefly, so that was good. But yeah, that hour was tough.
Yeah, a little bit of the same. I think the news that we got towards the end of the evening was there's no broken bones. You know, he was complaining a little bit as he was being flown to Oklahoma City, and you know, you thought, okay, there's going to be some broken bones, and hopefully, you know, nothing more serious than that. And his pelvis area was really bothering him. His dad was telling me this, and then they went in and did a scan, and the news was good, you know, and shared it with my team and told them to practice at 3. So.
So I talked with OHP earlier today, and the reason they got into the crash is because they were illegally passing those 3 cars. Do you guys have any reaction to the reason for the accident?
That's the first I've heard of it. Yeah. we wasn't too concerned about what happened in the accident, more concerned with making sure that everybody involved was getting taken care of, and thank goodness that was happening quickly. So it was just a kind of amazing for me to leave my house. I was about 8 minutes from where it happened. It sounded like it, as soon as Coach Dunn called me, this happened a minute before, and then the number of people that were there and what was set up, what was being done so quickly was impressive, and doing everything to care for the injured. It was pretty impressive what was going on, and that's more concerning,
Jason back here.
John, wrestling community as a whole across the country is close-knit, and there was a lot of reaction across the country last night. I saw Arizona State Wrestling quote tweeted you guys. Gable Stevenson, who I know has had some social media tiffs with AJ, even showed his support. How impactful is that for everyone involved, the family, you guys, the coaches, the teammates, to see that type of outpour coming from across the country outside of the Stillwater community?
Yeah, well, it's nice. Yeah, it's just, especially when you don't know anything, people reaching out to you, what can we do? How can we help? It's a good feeling that you do have that. As competitive as we are, and at times not like each other, especially during competition. It's just good to see people reach out to you and whatever we need, And I needed some things done yesterday that some of my wrestling friends helped me with, and so it's a wonderful community, and I'm glad I've been a part of it for a long time.
Dave, that might be a great question for you too, from a track and field perspective. Outreach and things that maybe just kind of looking out towards the group.
Yeah, same thing that Coach Smith said, that I've been contacted by dozens and dozens of coaches across the country. Unfortunately, some of our coaching colleagues have gone through this very recently and lost some young men to car wrecks in the last couple of weeks. So it's been kind of cycling through our sport a little bit. That kind of these things seem, the perceptions, they come in waves, and this was I think since it's happened a couple times the last couple of weeks, then it felt like another one happening. So there was an immediate outpouring and people being supportive, and I kind of thought it was ironic. Just a week ago, I was contacting my coaching colleagues saying, "Hey, we're hearts broken for you and your fans and your young men and women and their families," and then I was getting the same thing back. But like Coach said, it's guys that you compete against and you can't stand all year long, and something like this happens, and you realize how close you really are and how similar we are, and how we, doing the same thing, kind of caring for and mentoring and being friends and leaders for, young men and women. It just it puts things back in perspective, I guess.
This is for Dave. Coach John Smith said that he got a call from Coach Dunn. How did you find out about the accident?
Our athletic trainer called and asked me if I had spoken to Isai recently, and I said no, and she said, have you heard about the accident? And I don't like getting calls at home at night because it's never good news, and so I just sat down immediately and said, no, what happened? And she was very cautious what she was telling me, but the information she had was severe, and it was very emotional immediately, and like it didn't turn out that way, so thank God. But my mind went to what's the worst case scenario based on what she said, and it wasn't good. And trying to get a hold of his parents, trying to find him, like I said, for the next hour was tough.
Marshall, down here in
Yeah,
front.
Dave. AJ, he was at a wrestling thing coaching. Did you know why Isai was with him? Are they buddies? Like, kind of how did he get in that scenario?
Those two dudes are kind of inseparable. I mean, I don't know. They're kind of the same spirit. They kind of have the same outlook on life and zest for life and competitive and just this kind of joy in them that they just gravitate towards each other. And I don't know. Honestly, they're kind of inseparable. Outside guys on our team, and probably not even excluding guys on our team, I think AJ is the guy that Isai feels most connected to in this university, and it kind of seems mutual. Those guys they're with each other all the time. So.
Dean right here in the middle.
When we had our national championships, or actually the Big 12 championships in cross country, and Isai was getting interviewed after the meet, AJ was standing by him in the picture, posing. Well, it's the cross country meet, but AJ's a part of it. It's like, and Isai goes to wrestling practice and wants to watch AJ wrestle. So those guys are. Mm-hmm. They're, I was going to say one of a kind, but they're two of a kind.
You guys were both talking about how there was a lot of conversations with a lot of people in the athletic department throughout the night. Was there much conversation between the two of you when all this was going on?
Yeah, Coach called me basically right after I'd heard. I was actually still on the phone finding out what this thing had happened, and Coach called me and said, hey, you need to know. And the first thing he said to me is, I want you to know, I heard that the track guy, he knew Isai, but told him that the track guy crawled out by himself and was standing there, and convinced that was like, whew, that's different from what I just heard a minute ago. That he was on a flight with critical injuries, and so that was good to hear. And then we talked a couple more times throughout the night, because I was at the hospital here in Stillwater and he was in Oklahoma City, and so we were kind of, I was asking Isai, how did you think AJ was? He goes, when I left AJ, he was trying to get off the gurney. I mean, he was trying to unstrap himself, said, I need to go, I'm fine. And I said, whew, that's good to hear, because you got flown. It sounded serious, but. He was just like, I know AJ's gonna be okay. He's gonna be okay. This hope they have, it sometimes is irrational, but kind of what makes them special. And he said, he's gonna be fine. We're both gonna be fine. So.
So now that we know they are both going to be fine, do you guys know what this means for their upcoming seasons or their upcoming performances? What does this mean athlete-wise or student-athlete-wise once the injuries are better?
Just you take it day by day. I mean, I don't know where, there is some injuries to AJ. Don't know how serious, so, but we do know it's not broken bones, right? But we also doesn't know that it's not ligaments or something, so feel pretty fortunate where he's at right now. I'm not too worried about him coming back too soon, or maybe not even coming back. I don't know, So I don't know. You just stand there, last night, and you just realize, there's so much more important than whether they come back or not, And so, not knowing and standing there and seeing what you see in front of you, you're in a whole different world of understanding what's important.
Isai, he told me, we have a race this weekend, he told me he was racing. But the doctor said, no, you're not. So he's not, but he thinks he is. But, yeah, he's not going to.
Yeah, John, AJ's family, I mean, they're kind of all cut from the same cloth, and you were communicating with his dad last night, and I think most people found out first there was an accident because his dad posted asking for prayers on Facebook. But how was his dad, how was his family handling this last night as far as you could tell in your conversation?
I didn't get to see him a lot. I called his father and told him what happened. I'm heading there. And he didn't hesitate, just said, we'll be right there. And of course, I was on the west side of the accident towards Perkins. And like his dad, knowing his dad, he went right around that barricade and went right to, didn't stop, didn't hesitate, and he was going to his son. And so I'm glad I was there to let them know who that was. So, but I didn't get to communicate it to him until the end of the evening, and when he came out of AJ's room and told us where he was at.
He was fairly calm.
Yeah, I only saw him once and talked to him one time. Yeah.
And how have the teams responded to this?
Well, for our team, they're in the workout room right now getting ready for practice. I think, like I said, when we had some good news that things we didn't know until AJ's father came out and said, hey, it looks good. There's no broken bones in this. And we shared the news. And I think that kind of put everybody to rest that, AJ's going to be fine in time, So I think you just shift to thinking about your regular day. Okay, I'm going back to work. Got practice at 3. And so, I think the good news from what we first originally thought as I was going to the scene, a lot different. Really low to really high. That's what the experience was.
Jason?
Is there any conversation right now with your athletes of just adding that extra sense of, hey, be careful, whether it's driving or anything, just, knowing because of, especially with the hotel, as you found out, the hospitals, COVID issues, just, does this add that extra layer for you guys right now?
Seatbelts save lives. Yeah, so both the athletes had their seatbelts on. And it was a bad wreck for AJ and Steve. It was a bad wreck when you look at the car.
Yeah, I think for any coach or parent or someone who works with people this age, this is the thing that, for me as a coach, keeps me awake every night. That call at night. And I've been through in my career before where I've lost kids to car accidents. And, it's happened 3 times, and it doesn't get easier. It honestly gets harder. And so we talk about this all the time, to kids. Don't take anything for granted. It's that quick. And, one looking down at your radio or your phone or your whatever, anything. Yeah, there's so many ways things can go wrong. And in a car is probably one of the easiest ways to have a major problem. So we also have kids that run on, go for runs and run on roads and tell them, hey, stay on the sidewalk, don't go on roads. I'll say, oh yeah, coach, whatever. But we've had kids hit just walking down the street before too. So, this again will reinforce and say, look, we again got past this miraculously without losing anybody or having anybody really critically hurt. But, it's probably a game of inches, and a couple inches one way or the other in this wreck, and it could have been an entirely different story. So.
Allie, down front.
I know both of you talked about the reactions within the wrestling and the track communities, but specifically with your teams, how did the team kind of respond to support? Were there any specific athletes who stepped up and kind of showed that support?
My team, like I said, we had several try to come into the hospital, try to get there when they found out where he was. I made the mistake of telling people, hey, we found him, this is where he is, and then instantly a bunch of the guys tried to come, and we had to kind of send a message out, hey, don't come to the hospital. They're getting frustrated with us. But Shea Foster, who's a new kid on our team, but has become a leader since the day he got here, he wasn't going to be denied, and he came in and stayed with Isai till Isai finally kicked us out at about 2:00 and said, hey, I got to get some sleep. And so we left at 2, but he was going to spend the night with him, and Isai said, no, man, you need to go. I need to sleep. So.
Down in front.
Yeah, for us, it was, Dayton Fix made a call to me and said, what do you want me to put out? You want me to do anything? And I said, at this point, nothing until we find out more. And once we found out, he shared it with the team. So, and kind of like what I said, that it kind of put everybody at ease when we knew that it wasn't life-threatening. And that was good news when we heard that.
John, you mentioned that last night you kind of had the thought there's things more important than wrestling at hand here. For each of you, I know it's been less than 24 hours, but for yourselves, for your athletes, what is the perspective to be gained from this?
Well, there's a lot, right? I mean, when we find out exactly what happened, we need to have some lessons and what not to do in the future. But life does go on, right? I think for AJ, we'll just have to wait and see, what his future holds, this season, maybe from the standpoint of his health, right? And so we're not in any hurry to bring him, bring him forward right now. He's going to need some time. I know his dad was really saying he's really sore this morning and not moving real well. So there's going to be some time before, he returns.
Yeah, I think this, same thing. When you get that call and the first thing goes through your mind is please, 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 please don't let this be. And you're praying to yourself or to God or to whoever. You're saying don't let this be what I think it is. And, when it comes out, it's not. And you've made all these deals with yourselves that from now on I'm going to emphasize every single day, drive safely. And then, time goes by and you kind of forget. And this kind of resets you to, like I said, how precious and fragile life is, and trying to get young people to understand that, like, someone who's 50 understands it, is a little difficult. But, every day, just you want kids to appreciate every single day they get, because there are no guarantees. And so, that's my team's at practice waiting for me right now. When I get there, that's what we're going to talk about, is that, look, we got through this, everything's going to be okay, it's fine. But it just, hopefully, it's kind of a reminder to all of us how quickly it can all change.
John, if you could share a little bit about what you've seen of AJ and Isai's relationship, because that obviously seems a little bit unique, a little track kid and AJ.
Yeah, I think a lot what Coach Smith said. Man, they're around each other all the time, and they spend a lot of time together. And I think most of it is from a competitive nature, that training, not hanging out, not doing the wrong things, not out at the bars, but working out, lifting, running, whatever it is. I think that they've found a connection that both of them want to be the best in their sport. And I think that's the connection, It's not something that's fake. It's something that's really real. And both of them are pretty close to it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'd say they both love OSU. And they both love OSU athletics as a whole. I mean, AJ is generally interested to have a national champion wrestler with his stature show up at a cross-country meet and be there to the very end, jumping up and down, going crazy, and then hugging his buddy at the end and complimenting the women's team for winning, and just being involved and truly, supporting and caring about what's going on at the OSU athletics. To me, I know, I love AJ. I love AJ Ferrari. I think that kid is awesome. I think his spirit and his drive, his greatest strength might at times be his greatest weakness, but it's still his greatest strength. And I think Isai Rodriguez is the same way. And that just passion and joy for life and everything OSU, that, like he said, those are the things that those guys have in common. And most people don't get it. They look at it and think, man, that's weird. But those guys see a kindred spirit, I think.
Any other questions from the coaches? Coaches, is there anything maybe that we missed or anything that's important to you that we want to go over while we're here, while we've got everybody?
I'm good.
All right.
Thank you.
Dave, just curiosity. You were back in Oregon. I mean, did you ever cross paths?
No, I was about 10 years too young. Yeah. I know a lot of people who...
That's the classic story of athlete,
Yep.
automobile.
Yep.
To this day.
Yep, and I had people in my circle that were close to him, and in fact, his college roommate is a good friend of mine, and so that story's come up a lot. And Texas A&M's lost 2 kids in the last month to car wrecks on our track team. So it's never is easy.
From what I hear, that last night, those two are very, very lucky.